My mom is up early in Tucson, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie joins us now. Hi, Mom. Good morning.
Hi, Savannah.
Well,
Hi, everybody.
I see that you've already made your bed, even though it's 3 a.m. there or whatever. Mom, why was this an important skill to teach me?
Again, one has to ask whether Savannah's coverage of her mother in her own bedroom, also at a restaurant in Tucson, didn't trigger someone with a grievance to target her mother.
I got nightmares in my head, I feel thoughts build up until I can't. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I feel.
Can I just say, I'm a fairly small creator on YouTube, and you wouldn't believe the grievances people have against me, the hatred, and some of the things people have done, you really wouldn't believe. I mean, the lengths some have gone to sabotage me and my work. If I told you, you wouldn't believe it. Just the amount of spite that is out there. And I'm small fry. Savannah is an anchor at America's largest morning show on TV. You see her face every day. You see her voice every day. I don't even show my face on TV. And a lot of her work was in the political arena at a politically very, very fraught time. I've said before that I've already put together a profile of a politically motivated crime, but at this stage I don't feel comfortable sharing it with you guys because I just don't think most of you are ready for it. What I do want to talk to you about is likely to be pretty divisive anyway. I'm talking about in this analysis. And it does sort of play into some of the elements of the theory I stitched together at around day 3 of this case. This is before the ransom notes turned out to be bogus. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, interesting, meaningful, please do hit the thanks button. By the way, if you're interested in the Ramsey case, I've recently posted a very interesting analysis on Santa Claus, who was a prime suspect in that case for a time. And so I really want to recommend that you watch that. I'm also very keen to do a part 2 to that analysis. As soon as that video has passed about 10,000 views, I will get to that part 2. So if you do watch it and you enjoy it, please do share it onto your social media, onto your Facebook, on X, or you can even WhatsApp the link. YouTube does offer that option that you can share directly onto WhatsApp to people that you know, to your friends who are interested in true crime. I'm also covering a case in Australia right now. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 40 days while Gus Lamont, a 4-year-old, disappeared from a farm in South Australia 160 days ago. He's been missing 4 times longer. What lessons do we learn from that case, and how is this one different? And how is this case actually much, much easier to solve? Well, if you're interested in me answering those questions, let me know in the comments. And let's get started. So, 3 days ago, Newsweek published this article. Nancy Guthrie case, detective says man on camera is experienced at shooting. According to the article, a veteran homicide detective said the potential subject seen in surveillance footage released by law enforcement in the Nancy Guthrie case is probably experienced in shooting. I would not say that it's necessarily military or police, but somebody who is experienced enough with firearms where he's more comfortable carrying it in a holster than just shoving it into his waistband like most thugs. That's according to Dale Lundberg, a veteran homicide detective. That's what he said on the podcast Break the Case with Jennifer Coffindaffer. I must say I agree with his logic. I agree with his reasoning. What about you? So, although I concur, I would take it further than that. Folks in law enforcement often wear a uniform, right? And I would say, from 10,000 miles away, I have quite an unpopular opinion. And it's basically an inference we draw from the sort of unofficial uniform that this suspect is wearing. You're not going to like it, by the way.
Are you sure you want to hear this?
There is a saying, it takes a thief to catch a thief, but I also think what makes it a lot harder to catch a thief is a thief with knowledge of law enforcement protocols, someone who is ex-law enforcement. And this is what made it relatively difficult to catch Brian Koberger. Although Koberger had fairly advanced knowledge of investigative procedures and techniques, he had no actual experience committing a crime, and it showed. By the way, one of the most infamous criminals in South Africa was an ex-cop called Andre Stander. I think there was a film about him at one point on Netflix, wasn't there?
He's running the goddamn force.
He has made us look impotent in our own country.
We want him stopped. Shot on sight.
So from 10,000 miles away, the uniform I see on camera is very similar to what the ICE agents wear. Am I wrong in saying that? They are also wearing masks, often similar masks, and a sort of de facto combat gear, but not quite. My question is, if you're wearing a mask and doing proper legal law enforcement work, what is to stop an individual from doing improper, illegal enforcement, especially if that individual believes he is justified? And we also see their modus operandi is that they target an individual and they drag them away. They are very physical and strong in their actions. And whether you want to say they take them against that person's will or that they abduct them, it's the same thing. And this includes dragging people out of vehicles and putting them into other vehicles, or breaking into homes and taking people out of their homes and putting them into their own vehicles and driving away. Many ICE agents have training and are relatively young and inexperienced. And so that seems to be what we're dealing with here, is someone who is got some experience but is still relatively inexperienced. It's a kind of a strange combination. So I'm thinking that's who we might be dealing with. Not necessarily an ICE agent per se, but possibly someone with links to one. Not necessarily a law enforcement person per se, but possibly someone with limited educational experience or links to one. And perhaps with the same ideology. Have a look at this headline. Civil rights groups sue to stop ICE abductions in New York courthouses. Masked officers have been gathering to look for people attending mandatory immigration appointments. That's a very targeted approach. Now, we have also seen recently a lot of activity taking place that some have described as abductions, including of the very young and the very old, or otherwise vulnerable. Check this out.
Shows federal agents body slamming 79-year-old American citizen Rafi Shohead just outside of his car wash in Van Nuys roughly 2 weeks ago. This after Rafi says agents stormed into his business and roughed him up after he attempted to ask what they needed.
In that particular incident, the agents didn't seem particularly interested in him until he seemed to sort of object to what was going on. And then they seemed to develop a grievance against him, didn't they?
The agents pummeled him again.
I have a heart condition. 3 big people were sitting on my back, the way they tore me down, sitting on me.
Now, I understand that some people will reflexively scoff at the idea, and those people have probably even stopped watching the video. Why? Because it runs counter to what you believe, and so it automatically goes into the outbox. I get that. But the reality is, this scenario ticks literally every box in this case. No financial motive, check. A suspect with firearms training, check. But not a proper law enforcement individual. due to the eccentric use of the hip holster, check. Someone with some experience taking people against their will, but also not a seasoned criminal, but an amateur in many respects, check. Someone used to targeting civilians, check. And also male, relatively young, and with a chip on his shoulder, check. According to the sheriff, Nanos told the BBC that he believes Guthrie was a victim of a targeted kidnapping. Well, I'm not sure it was a kidnapping, but it clearly was targeted. And what sort of targeted abductions have been taking place every day lately for the past several months? And who was doing that? And doesn't this feel a lot like that? It's not that, but doesn't it feel a lot like that? Does that make sense? Well, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.